How's your day been so far?
Day's been pretty good. Lots of work, but exciting stuff.
For everyone watching, I am joined right now by Riot Blaustoys. Nathan Blau, who is a, you should go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I am a researcher at Riot, and I'm the gameplay insights lead. And what I do is I gather data, whether it be sentiment data from surveys or behavioral data from like win rates or play rates of champions, and I use that information to help inform our designers and our product teams.
And I was going to say, I feel like you're kind of like I don't want to say rising star, that's very dramatic, but like you're becoming more and more visible as you tweet out stuff and you're sort of out there talking about different things that players care about, I think.
Yeah, I think part of that is that I'm sort of at a time in my career and also just personal life where I genuinely engage with like a lot of the League of Legends content too. So I think part of that's just because I'm playing the game a lot. I watch a lot of streamers. I love to watch the NALCS. So I just like to be a part of the conversations. I also think I just happen to have like a lot of like pretty interesting data or pretty interesting like sort of insight into stuff that players want to hear. So,
yeah. So actually, like, there's just a ton of people playing behind us right now. What is this room?
So this is the PC Bong, which is our PC cafe where a lot of gamers come in and play whatever game they're interested in, oftentimes things like League, Overwatch, PUBG, etc.
So hopefully it's not too loud in here over the course of this interview, but let's talk a little bit about your background. So when did you join Riot?
I joined Riot in, I think, 2015.
Okay, so you've been here for about 3 years.
Yeah, about 3. Oh yeah, it's 3 years in August.
Okay, 3 years in August. All right. And what were you doing before then?
I was a user researcher for Sony PlayStation, actually, in San Mateo.
So you worked on the user experience side, that for the console world, which is a little different than like the PC world.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing was less that it was console versus PC, and it was more we're going to ship a AAA sort of game, get it out, and the Riot's sort of games as a service. We're constantly updating a game.
Yeah, so it's very different in that, like, because you are actually looking at data that is active and using that to sort of inform the decisions that the game, like the updates to the game, right? Rather than, because you're basically able to look at all the stuff that players are doing in the game at any given point in time and try to pull like lessons and learnings from that, I imagine.
Exactly, yeah. So a lot of that for the live games is like you just have way more information. When you're doing stuff for those AAA games, a lot of it's just sort of exploratory research, player labs or play testing, where you bring in a bunch of people from the audience you're looking to sell the game to, have them play through it, give feedback on it. That was a lot of the work I did for Sony.
I think it's got to be interesting because data people oftentimes I feel like are like the bane of the people that are actually creating something, right? Because the data people come in, you want to be helpful and give them advice and say like, okay, this is what's going on here. But a lot of people design, they build things, they create things off of like gut instincts, right? Like they're creatives, and so you're coming in with, I don't know, what is it like? Do you come in with spreadsheets and say like, well, I know you think that this is the right thing to do, but actually all the data says otherwise. Like, is that how that works?
I actually think Riot has a healthy relationship with that, and like me personally, and that's, I mean, it's kind of buzzwordy, but it's our whole thing. We're like, oh, don't be data driven, be data informed, which is, and I actually think a lot of the designers, even the artists at Riot, are really bought into that, which is they will always consider the data. That's always something that's on the table, whatever that data is, but we're not necessarily just going to go with what that says. Because the classic example of that could be if 60% of people want A and 40% want B, it's like, oh yeah, well obviously you go with A because 60% want it. Well, but what if if you went with B, the 60% might not be as happy, but they'd still, play whatever that game B is, whereas if you go with A, you lose all the 40%, right? There's all sorts of, work that goes into that's beyond just the data, so I still think the gut and intuition is super important.
So the community's interaction with data is very much like, I went to this third-party website and I see my favorite champion has a 47% win rate, which is less than 50%. My champion is imbalanced and you need to fix it. And that's, I think, we're talking a little bit about data and how you roll. That's probably what they expect, right? What is actually going on there? Like what is happening with you?
Yeah, I mean, so they show me that 47% win rate champion, and there's so much to look into. I mean, so is a 40% win rate across all elos? Is it the same in bronze as it is in challenger? What if those are different? What's it doing to pro play? What's that win rate look like for someone who's the first time person playing that champion versus someone on their 100th game, something like a mastery curve. People usually, like Malphite's an interesting champion, people usually cap out their win rate on Malphite at I think it was 6 or 7 games, whereas characters like Riven, I mean, people are still slowly climbing up in their win rates with hundreds of games on her. That's, barring that you're not just improving at the game in general. I think a great way to think about this, though, is I can design a champion that has a perfect 50% win rate. It's called the coin flip champion. And you start the game, and you flip a coin. If it's heads, you win. If it's tails, you lose. Perfectly balanced, right? 50%. Is that good, though? Right? Probably not. So that's the example where it's like there's so much more that goes into win rates or into any of those data that you have to talk about.
So why Riot? So you were working at Sony, you lived in the Bay Area, I guess?
Yeah.
Okay, so then moving down south to Riot, how did that whole experience happen? Maybe, I assume you talk a lot, we've talked before, you love Yasuo, it seems like you play this game a lot.
Yes, so I guess we'd have to step back once to college, actually, maybe even go even further back to high school, where I was a closet nerd, and I remember it was actually the summer of senior year, right before college started. All of my friends were out trying to go and they're trying to go party, go talk to the girls and stuff, and I wanted to play StarCraft 2. That had dropped, and I was so into it. I loved StarCraft 2. It was the first game I really got competitive with. In college, I actually I was Masters ranked. I played in the Collegiate Star League. One of the highlights of my entire gaming career was I cheesed the shit out of this Grandmaster player. I forgot what school. I think it was Ontario. So it was University of Chicago versus Ontario. I cheesed the shit out of him and won a game. Felt so amazing. I loved competitive gaming. So when I worked for PlayStation, it was great because I also loved AAA games. I mean, I was a big Final Fantasy fan, but that competitive drive was something that I think I was missing. When I actually originally applied for Riot, I got the offer, but I turned them down because I was still new in the industry, and I felt like maybe Sony was a more traditional, maybe safer choice.
A lot of people are going to hear you say that, and they're going to be like, what the hell? He turned down a job at Riot?
Honestly, I did because, and to be honest, there were family issues as well. I have family up in the Bay. I had just moved there from Chicago. I wanted to be closer to them. But it was actually around this time that Bard dropped, and Bard was that was the champion that got me into League. I became a Bard one trick.
Wait, so hang on. So when you say it got me into League, had you played League before, and then Bard, was it a movie, the video that they came out for Bard? What was it about Bard that got you into League of Legends? Because it's such a random champion.
So I was actually playing a little bit before with it's bad, but it was my colleagues, it was the other research team at Sony would play League after work. And that team was amazing. They're basically the best mentors I could have in the industry. But yeah, they actually they got me into League of Legends. Bard dropped while I was playing it. Maybe it was the movie, I don't know, it's Bard Mountain, that cinematic. I don't know what it was, but something about that character just got me. I started spamming him, and this is after I've already turned Riot down.
Yeah.
That started watching a lot of I'm a Cutie Pie. I just found him really funny. I really liked his stuff. There were a couple streamers I was watching then. I think it was Pokimane, I'm a Cutie Pie, and there was one other.
You're one of those.
Yeah, I watched. Yeah, it was basically the top whatever three streamers.
Pokey and Cutie. Yeah.
Exactly right. I just loved watching their stuff on League. Basically hit Riot up again a year later. I was like, can you guys take me back? And here I am.
Yeah. So you make all these jokes about Yasuo, but Bard was the thing. I could not think of two different champions than Bard and Yasuo.
So all of my colleagues here who have been here when I started and then know me now know of this horrible, it's a horrible transition. When I joined Riot, I was a happy-go-lucky Bard main. I was a support player. Used to start the games. I was Riot Blastoise then. I used to start games hey, good luck, have fun, summoners. Oh, GG, well played. And I didn't really care about rank. I really just wanted to have fun.
You were a for fun player.
I was for fun. I don't know what happened. I think it was, I sort of specifically remember a little bit of it, but I remember I wanted to try a Azir and I wanted to try a mid lane. And I'd never laned against a Yasuo because we weren't in the season where you could play Yasuo bot. And I remember I played a Azir into Yasuo in like a cold game, and I was just like, how is he doing? He's going all through these minions and dashing all around, and I was just, it blew my mind. I remember there's a diamond level player sitting next to me. It was one of our data scientists, this dude Matt, and I was like, Matt, what is that champion? How do you do all those things? Like, I mean, that's Yasuo. That's what he does. I made a Smurf. I started playing on it because I was basically like, I'm totally role swapping to a new role, new champion. Made a new account. Was playing on it, and I fell in love with Yasuo. Even though like new players, even though I was like a gold bard player, new players would beat me on Yasuo because I was so bad at him. Long story short, I ended up being this like try hard, like hard stuck, high plat, low diamond Yasuo. Now instead of saying good luck, have fun, I solo kill people and I throw up question marks. I throw up the mastery. I'm like that kind of player now.
Okay. Well, I think, yeah, that it sounds more like Yasuo is doing that to you than I think anything else. Like
Yeah.
we now know how those players become who they are. So you join Riot, and what was that whole experience like? Because Riot is a very, like, covering it for so long, I know Riot's a very different company, right? Like, I think the people who disagree with a lot of things that Riot does and maybe don't like the company, as well as the people that love the company, everyone would agree it's a very different type of company. So what was sort of the experience of joining that like for you?
I think the biggest sort of shock to me joining Riot was like, I just felt like I had a lot more freedom to do things, if that makes sense. It was basically like at other areas where I've worked, whether it was, I don't know, working in labs in Chicago or working for PlayStation, I felt like there was more clear direction for what needed to be done, whereas Riot was a lot more like, you could kind of carve your own path, you could sort of set out to do things. I really love that sort of amount of freedom where, if you had an idea, if you had something that you thought was the right way of going about something, the right way of analyzing something, you could always pitch it. So I really loved that. And then the other thing that I've always loved about Riot is like, and some people I think this could be a downside for me as a major upside, like, these are my friends. Like, we would finish work, we'd go and play some in-house games, play League. When Overwatch dropped, we were all playing, me and my buddies were all playing Overwatch together. We'd play PUBG together. It became my crew of friends.
What is something that you've worked on that has impacted the player base? Like something that players would know about where like you had work that directly involved sort of the end result of what they did?
I go back to it and it's still like the biggest project I worked on was Runes Reforged. That was one where me as like the insights lead on that project, I partnered with the design and product team so early. I mean, we're talking well over a year before we launched, and I got to do so much for that team. That was me getting to do some of the early research just about what players thought of our old Runes and Masteries system. That was getting to play test it with hundreds of players here in North America, a bunch of players, I think, in the hundreds of players over in China. We got to play test it with all of the North American LCS teams. We ran it with a couple of the Korean teams. And that was me getting to like work really closely with them on the product, talking with designers of, hey, here's what we're seeing in these play tests, here's what's going well, here's what's not going well, and us being able to just rapidly iterate and fix things. In fact, one of the best experiences I had was a crew of players that we actually had come in every single week for like 2 months to play test games on it, and they got to like see as we were iterating on it.
These are just like lucky players who've signed up for this?
Yeah, basically anyone in like the broader like SoCal area will, we have a way of like reaching out to them through email to like come and bring them in, and we have like different criteria. And so people were also, I've seen people joke about this, but yeah, like we bring in bronze players because those are good perspectives to know. We also bring in diamond players because those are great perspectives to know as well. And then, clearly we brought in North American pro players, and then the Korean pros for the truly high level experience.
Yeah, exactly. It's a scale. It's like, okay, we know that
Yeah.
North America can handle it. Now the Korean pro.
I mean, I could bring in like Korean platinum players, and that could substitute for the North American
Yes,
pros.
that's true.
But,
Very good, very good. I see. It must be interesting too because you obviously are interested in like the esports side, and the esports, like the experience for the esports side is so different than what's going on at like the bronze player level or like the new player, right? Like Runes Reforged has to be great for somebody who's playing League of Legends for the first time, and it has to be great for Faker.
yes.
And that must be like crazy for you to try to tackle.
Yeah, I mean that was. I will say, like one of the best moments since working at Riot was when we, and it was weird. So it's like we ran it with it was Jin Air Wings and Rocks Tigers. We ran it with the North American teams. It was a much earlier version, but the closest version to what we launched was something that we ran with the Korean pros. I remember they play tested some games on it, and the games looked like they were going really well. And they got to read through all of the change lists, all that. And I remember being in a room in our Korean office, and they were asking like, "What's the overall take on this stuff?" And like, I was waiting for the translator to like finish up, and when they were, it came back with like overwhelmingly positive sentiment from the pros. They're like, "Yeah, this is like really good for the game. It keeps it really fresh. It's like it feels better than the old system." Man, hearing that from like the Korea, like, because we knew from the outset that it was way better for newer players and for lower level players. Hearing that from the Korean pros was like, that was one of the best moments.
Have you had the opposite, where you just get like really critical feedback?
Yes. Man, I'm trying to think of an example of one where I could think of like some champion level stuff where we've had players come in and the champion just had some rough stuff.
Because it must be like the fascinating thing to me is there are all these people who are like designers who are like working on this. They're super excited about it, and then you get to be the guy that goes and does like a survey or brings players in, and you get to go to them and say like, everyone hates your shit. Like that must be fascinating, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a really good one that we had that we play tested where people were like, this is yikes. On the note of Runes Reforged, the first time we ran it in China, it did not go over particularly well there.
Really?
Yeah, because ran several rounds in China, several rounds in North America, and the first round in China did not go over as well. But it had a lot of promise, and like that was a really fun task because, like, and when I say it didn't go over well, it's like there were just clear things that we could work on, and the team knew about them. And like, I think what's worse for me is if I came out of any of those play tests or any of our research, and I talked to designers or I talked to the product, and they're like, "Yeah, well, but our goals are still this, and we're still going to do this." I came out of a lot of these things, and the best teams to work with, especially the Runes Reforged team, was they're like, "Yeah, that's really good. We're going to do something about it." We ended up running it again in China like 2 months later. We sent another build over, had another play test, and came back way better. And so that's what feels good. Obviously, you're going to have bad sentiment on stuff in progress, but it's what you do about it. I love that.
Nathan, you must be, in some sense, like the ultimate arbiter of what is OP and what is underpowered, right? Because like that, you're basically able to look at the data and figure out, like what has the highest win rates at what point. Like you should be, in a sense, like judge, jury, and executioner on like this champion is OP versus this one.
It gets even a little deeper than that because the thing that's kind of strange is there's also like, what if players are playing a character like a champion suboptimally with a certain win rate, where it's like, we know that too, where it's like, we can see what a champion's win rate is just across everyone, across all elos, all builds, all skill leveling, and maybe it's like 51%. And maybe that champion played optimally is only 52%, where they do everything correct that gives them the highest win rate. Whereas with another champion, it could be something up like 56%. It could be something really strong. Yeah, we do have a sense of, maybe what is the strongest or the weakest. But even then, it's still super situational, right? Depends on, are you playing in a bronze game? Are you playing in a Masters game? Are you playing in pro with full voice comms and full communication? Those things definitely change it a bit too.
Why not release more of this data?
Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be like really cool for us to do in the future. And we actually do share out some of this stuff. Maybe it's just not as widely known, but there's an Insights blog post that actually shares out some of our data around things like play rates or win rates. But yeah, I think like in the future, I'd love to see us, and in some ways we have informed things, right? Suggested item builds, stuff like that.
Sure.
I'd love to see us though do more, especially as we're looking to like update our new player onboarding experience. I'd love to see us use some of that data to help inform players make some of those decisions. But the other thing that we have to remember is there is like, there's different motivations for playing League. There are some people who are definitely want to just play whatever's the strongest, the meta champion to win their games. And then like, there's people like me, like I really don't care what the strongest win rate mid laner is. Like I'm gonna play Yasuo. I'm gonna try and style on them. I'll probably lose most of my games, but when I make a montage out of it, you don't see the games I lost. So
one of the interesting things for me is, kind of going back to the start of the conversation, there's probably a lot of people that don't know, like they think, oh, I don't know if I could design a champion. I don't know if I could do art, but maybe they're very analytical. They don't really know that your role exists. So what would you say to people who are like thinking about entering into this role or like trying to find these types of jobs at companies like Riot that are maybe deeply satisfying, but like are more, vague or sort of in the background?
Yeah, so I mean, as far as like what you maybe would be studying in school, I think you want to be looking at things like statistics, computer science, psychology, actually, or any sort of course that gets you into like experimental design. I actually think economics, a great one to study, if not else, because like a lot of video game design or just like how we like make decisions analytically, or a lot of that's really strong in the econ field. So I think you want to be doing stuff like that, and then it's also a lot about just like thinking about how you would apply data, how you would solve a problem, or how you would even identify a problem using data.
If you had to say something about Riot or sort of the experience here to people who don't really know about what goes on here, right? Like the only thing they can really see is like the game that comes out, some of the messaging that you guys work on a lot to like put it out there. Like what would you say to somebody who is just looking to learn more about what life is like here at Riot and sort of the experience of working here?
I think two things. Number one is, I just love Riot. I think it's an amazing place to work. I live close to our campus here. I get to like longboard into work. I get to talk with like some of the smartest people I've had the chance to either work or study with. It's a really collaborative environment. People are really passionate and driven here. But I think the one thing that sometimes does bother me when I see it sometimes is like, I'll see players go, oh, like Riot doesn't care about players, or Riot this, like they ignore us or whatever. We get stuff wrong a lot. Like yeah, we fuck up sometimes. We do dumb shit, but I genuinely believe Riot as a company cares about players and cares about them. And this is just forget like screw whatever you guys have seen from like communications or what you guys see in the game. Just from the people I interact with and who work with on a daily basis, I know they care about our players. And I mean, like, listen, the second that I don't get that sense at Riot, I'm fucking out. Like I will leave Riot as soon as I don't feel like we are actually trying. Again, we'll screw up, but at least that when we're not trying to deliver great things to players.
Hey, Nathan.
Hold me to that.
Very good. Hey, Nathan, thank you so much for sitting down with me today. It's really good to talk to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Travis.
Yeah, thanks.